Hi, I'm the 3 Minute Sociologist. Today I'd like to talk to you about deviance. How often have you said, wow, that's weird? Now, no matter what it was, somebody's behavior or a situation you're in, it just didn't feel right and it looked strange. What's really going on here? Sociologists take a lot of time and spend a lot of time thinking about deviance. It's in part of your personal collection of experiences, and it's you've learned that there are certain things that are right or wrong in society, and when you see something that departs from that, hey, it looks weird to you and it looks like deviance. So how do sociologists see this anyway? Well, let's take a look at a couple of things. First, it's all about norms. Okay, I mean, these are rules for living. They come from culture, from groups around us, from our families, and so forth. And it becomes a personal understanding about what should happen. They're rules about life. They might be folkways, or they might be laws, or a variety of other things that shape what we do and how we do it. Again, they come from cultural values, things that we think are worth, and beliefs, things that we think we know. And ultimately, they perform attitudes or predispositions for us to do stuff. So these rules set the sort of baselines. And against those baselines, we judge what's deviant. So then the definition of deviance is pretty straightforward. Deviance is some departure from the normative order. Let me look at that word normative. I didn't say abnormal. Abnormal sort of suggests that there is a right and a wrong absolute. Now, there may be, but sociologists don't generally see it that way. They generally see the normative order as a social construction, and then things that depart from it as deviant. Not necessarily right or wrong, just simply deviant, a departure from that normative order. Finally, in this brief overview, I'd like to look at just some parts of deviance. Deviance is a broad topic, and sociologists spend a lot of time with it. But I'm going to look at basically three things. First of all, that deviance isn't always bad. Second of all, that deviance may be primary or secondary. And thirdly, deviance has some seemingly contradictory functions in society. Let's take them in turn. First of all, deviance isn't always bad. When we think about the word deviant, we almost always associate it with something that is bad. We don't think that what somebody's doing fits our normative belief system, so it must be bad. Well, the reality is that deviance isn't necessarily bad. Innovation in modern society, the development of the cell phone, the development of the computer, at one point were all deviant acts, and yet innovation may be seen as deviance, but it wouldn't necessarily be bad. A function of the departure from the normative order for sure, but not necessarily bad. So deviance isn't always bad, and in fact, sometimes it's good. Secondly, and of course, bad and good are all sort of value judgments within a culture or within a person's belief system. Secondly, deviance may be primary or secondary. Well, that's jargon. Primary suggests that deviance is something that happens on a daily basis. You're walking down the sidewalk, and somebody's walking in our culture, in American culture, on the left-hand side of the sidewalk coming toward you. Well, what do you think? Well, that seems unusual because most of the time we're socialized in our culture to walk on the right-hand side. Now, the fact that this is happening in our culture doesn't mean it can't happen in some other way in another culture. You might be just as deviant in another culture walking on the right-hand side of the sidewalk if you're an American as this other person may be walking on the left hand. Now, the point I guess I'd make there is that that's primary deviance only because we don't really put anybody in jail for doing that most of the time. It's not a big deal, but we might sort of negatively sanction those people by sort of grimacing at them or frowning and saying, what are you doing over there? Were you raising a barn? We don't often see the cultural context or the background of the people who are doing this. We don't see the social situations around it. We just see it as sort of a daily departure from the normative order. And we've got a lot of that going on a daily basis, and we learn to live with it. That's opposed to secondary deviance. in which people are living a lifestyle of deviance. They've defined some departure from the normative order, and they tend to live in it. People who work in the skunk works, which is a group of people that are innovators, are deviants. In fact, very often they're moved aside into a part of the organization so they won't influence everybody else, but their main goal is just to come up with new ideas. And in that sense, their defined job, and to some degree their way of life, is to produce deviant thoughts, to produce innovation. In that sense, it's not only positive deviance, but it's a defined departure from the normative order, which is a lifestyle. We see this also sometimes with patterns of crime. And so we give both negative and positive sorts of values to some of these secondary deviants. When secondary deviance is defined, it's usually a lifestyle kind of a thing. People learn to live that secondary deviance. And that's what departs from the notion of primary deviance, which just suggests, hey, stuff happens in daily life. Thirdly, and this is kind of interesting too, deviance has two seemingly contradictory functions. One function is pretty obvious. When people deviate the normative order, they break laws, okay? They intentionally do something that they believe is wrong relative to the normative order. We negatively sanction them. Or if it's something that's really positive, like innovation, we positively sanction them. When we sanction this behavior, we support it, and consequently, we maintain the normative order. So you're supposed to get good grades, and you do, and we positively sanction that. That's not deviance at all, it's conformity, and it turns out that you're not doing badly. But if you do poorly on an exam, you may find that there are some sanctions that are imposed, and those sanctions are set up in such a way as to get you to get back on the path to conformity. So sanctioning deviance helps us control the normative order, helps us understand what we're supposed to do. Now, what seems to be a contradiction to this, and a valuable part of deviance and understanding it, is that deviance also is the harbinger of social change. That is to say, without some deviant acts, very often things will become stagnant. We can see this from a variety of different sociological theories, but just thinking in terms of what happens when we have started a social system that's supposed to help or support someone's actions, and suddenly we find out that that system no longer can. We're going to have to change it, and if we change it, what we're going to do is produce some deviant outcomes, some new things. Consequently, we'll find out that if we don't change the system in the direction of deviance, that system will stagnate and not work. Well, anyway, that's my 2 cents on deviance for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care.